this is not necessarily going to make people want to go get it, I don't think. Okay, so we've seen a few times this. I've been watching online people making fun of CNN for this particular headline. People vaccinated against COVID-19 less likely to die from any cause, study finds. Okay. For one thing, this says nothing about the vaccine itself. And we're going to look through the data. Before I do, just because it's YouTube, here's my thing. Of course, you should consult with your doctor and the CDC regarding CDC data regarding COVID-19 vaccines. COVID-19 vaccines are perfectly safe, all that good jazz. Thank you, YouTube. Is that enough for you? Anyway, let's continue. We're going to make fun a little bit of this article. We're also going to point out some interesting things surrounding the CDC data and make a point here. I'm not saying anything against the vaccines. I'm saying something against this particular study, YouTube. Amazing that I even have to say that, you censorious creeps. Let's see. So CNN ran this headline, October 22nd, came out last week. People vaccinated against COVID-19 less likely to die from any cause, study finds. People who got COVID-19 vaccines were not only less likely to die from the virus, but they were less likely to die from any cause over the following months, researchers reported Friday. The research team was trying to demonstrate that the 3 authorized COVID-19 vaccines are safe and say that their findings clearly demonstrate that. Starting with a conclusion, for one thing, I'm going to point out right there, and Carlin said it on her channel, I totally agree as a scientist, you are starting with a conclusion. You're not supposed to do that if you're doing scientific research. That is not the scientific process if you are starting with a conclusion and looking for evidence to prove that. Recipients of the Pfizer, Moderna, or Janssen vaccines had lower non-COVID-19 mortality risk than did the unvaccinated comparison group, the researchers wrote in the weekly report of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. COVID-19 vaccines authorized in the United States have shown again and again to be safe. This study also confirms their safety. Stanley Hsu, a researcher at the Kaiser Permanente, Southern California Department of Research and Evaluation, who led the study team, told CNN by email. Quote, in fact, it shows that people vaccinated for COVID-19 have lower death rates than those who were not vaccinated, even when COVID deaths were excluded. That's in addition to the mounting evidence from other studies showing that COVID-19 vaccines are effective against COVID-19 infection, serious illness, and death. The team studied 6.4 million who had been vaccinated against COVID-19 and compared them to 4.6 million who had received flu shots in recent years but who had not been vaccinated against coronavirus. Filtered out anyone who had died from COVID or after a recent positive COVID test. So, let's see. During December 2020 to July 2021, COVID-19 vaccine recipients had lower rates of non-COVID-19 mortality than did unvaccinated persons after adjusting for age, sex, race, ethnicity, and study site, they wrote. People who got 2 doses of Pfizer were less likely, 34% as likely to die of non-coronavirus causes in the following months as unvaccinated people, the study found. And in a second, I'm going to go show you the data because it's kind of funny. People who got 2 doses of Moderna vaccine were 31% as likely to die as unvaccinated people, and those who... That is really a poor way to phrase that. What they're actually talking about is the mortality rate, and it's not 31% as likely, I don't think, is the right way to phrase it there, but fine. Part of this is probably because people who get vaccinated tend to be healthier than people who don't, the researchers noted. There's other reasons than that. The lower mortality risk after COVID-19 vaccination suggests substantial healthy vaccine effects. Vaccine-y. Oh God, that's a fun word. I.e., vaccinated persons tend to be healthier than unvaccinated persons, which will be explored in future analyses, they wrote. This finding reinforces the safety profile of the current approved COVID-19 vaccines in the United States. All persons aged 12 and older should receive the COVID-19 vaccine, they concluded. Okay, as I'm going to say, consult with your doctor, all those kinds of things. Check out CDC data, do your research, decide whether or not you want the vaccine, whether or not the vaccine is good for you. I am not giving any medical advice. I am merely critiquing a study. Now, the thing is that they are talking about, the study they are talking about here is the CDC's weekly report here. So this is the report in question that they linked to. COVID-19 vaccination and non-COVID-19 mortality risks, 7 integrated healthcare organizations, United States, December 14th, 2020 to July 31st, 2021. So here's the thing with that. You can think about a lot of things that were going on during that time, and you were, hopefully starting to break out of lockdowns during that time, or any number of different things that were going on. Anyway, it's already known about this topic. Although deaths after COVID-19 vaccination have been reported to the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, few studies have been conducted to evaluate mortality not associated with COVID-19 among vaccinated and unvaccinated groups. What is added by this report, during December 2020 to July 2021, COVID-19 vaccine recipients had lower rates of non-COVID-19 mortality than did unvaccinated persons after adjusting for age. So I think, I feel like that. Oh, no, here it is. Yep, okay. Okay. I was going to say, I thought for a second they didn't quote it, which would have been plagiarism on CNN's part, but they did quote it. So fair point, CNN, you did the right thing there. There is no increased risk for mortality among COVID-19 vaccine recipients. This finding reinforces the safety profile of currently approved COVID-19 vaccines in the United States. All persons aged 12 years and up should receive the COVID-19 vaccine. Okay, a few things I want to point out. Let's see. Let's see. So, to assess mortality rate not associated with COVID-19, non-COVID-19 mortality after COVID-19 vaccination in a general population setting, a cohort study was conducted during the December 2020 to July 2021. Approximately 11 million persons enrolled in 7 vaccine safety data link sites, which I don't know off the top of my head what those are. After standardizing mortality rates by age and sex, this study found that COVID-19 vaccine recipients had lower non-COVID-19 mortality than did unvaccinated persons. So vaccine recipients of COVID-19 vaccine, which is supposedly designed to reduce the which according to CDC reduces the mortality rate of COVID-19, associated with COVID-19 anyway, had resulted in recipients having lower non-COVID-19 mortality than did unvaccinated persons. After adjusting for demographic characteristics in VSD site, the study found that the adjusted relative risk of non-COVID-19 mortality for the Pfizer vaccine was 0.41 after dose 1 and 0.34 after dose 2. Oh, I see. Now I understand this. It's relative risk. That's what it is. Anyway, relative risk of unvaccinated versus vaccinated. Let's put it that way. Vaccinated versus unvaccinated. Yeah, so like the lower the number, the less likely for risk of a problem with mortality. After dose 2, the end. Okay, so there's those numbers there. This is the section here. Standardized mortality rates, death per 100 person years, were calculated and compared with a rate ratio test between vaccinated and unvaccinated groups. A population of VSD members who were enrolled in December 2020 was used as the standard population. Overall, SMRs were reported separately from Pfizer, Moderna, and Janssen vaccines. Poisson models were used to calculate overall ARRs, again, relative risk, and 95% confidence intervals adjusted for age, sex, race, and ethnicity, and VSD sites, SMRs, and ARRs by age, sex, all that. Cohort consisted of 6.4 million COVID-19 vaccinees and 4.6 million unvaccinated persons with similar characteristics as the comparison groups. Among 3.5 million Pfizer biotech vaccine recipients, 9% that, okay, 2.6 million were Moderna, and then 340-ish thousand were Janssen vaccines. After excluding COVID-19 associated deaths, press a pause right there. What is an associated death? Is it dying from COVID? Is it dying with COVID? Is it from COVID, with COVID? Doesn't include any issue that arose because of the vaccine itself. Asking a question. That's all I'm asking. I'm going to let you think on that. Overall SMRs were dose 1. After dose 1 were 4.42 and 3.37 per 100 person years for the Pfizer and Moderna, respectively, and were 0.35 and 0.34 after dose 2. These rates were lower than the rate of 1.11 per 100 person years for the unvaccinated mRNA vaccine comparison group. Among Janssen vaccine recipients, the overall SMR was 0.84 per 100 person years, lower than the rate of 1.47 per 100 person years among the unvaccinated group. Among persons aged 12 to 17, SMRs were similar among the Pfizer biotech recipients and unvaccinated comparison groups. P-value. Okay. Probability. Okay. SMRs were also similar between Janssen vaccines and unvaccinated comparison group. Among that, other subgroups were defined by vaccine, received, age, sex. Okay. COVID-19 vaccine recipients had lower SMRs than did their unvaccinated counterparts. So statistically significant. This is a p-value. Statistically significant there. Okay. So I actually have that table because they actually have it down here handily. So this is the table they're referring to. Number of deaths and standardized mortality rate, deaths per 100 person years not associated with COVID-19 among COVID-19 vaccine recipients and unvaccinated comparison groups by age, sex, race, ethnicity. 7 integrated healthcare organizations, United States, December 14th, 2020 to July 31st, 2021. Important thing, again, here is to take number of deaths and standardized mortality rate. So this is your sort of standardized mortality rate is sort of your per capita in this. Deaths per 100 person years. So basically, the lower that number is, less likely somebody in that group is to die. Not associated with COVID-19 among COVID-19 vaccine recipients and unvaccinated comparison groups by age, sex, and race and ethnicity in here. So this is deaths not associated with COVID-19. And again, I still have the open question of what do you mean by associated in this? And that is a very fair question to ask you to clarify that. Do you mean with? Do you mean from? And are you including any adverse effects that resulted from the COVID-19 vaccines? And it's a fair question to ask, YouTube. I'm just asking a question of clarification for the CDC. Let's put it that way. Let's see here. So these are the things here, the mRNA vaccines, and this would be essentially your Johnson & Johnson over here. After dose 2, so the number in brackets is the standardized mortality rate per 100 years, per 100 person years. So nobody's been vaccinated with the Moderna 12 to 17 yet, and nobody with the Johnson & Johnson. So that's why their NA's there. Nobody's had that. They hadn't started. I don't think they'd started the trials in kids in Moderna and Johnson & Johnson then. 18 to 44. That is a really, well, no, I mean, it's about right. They're about the same width. You'd think it would go to what? It's 18 to 44. What can I say? So this is the number to pay attention to right here. Not the big number with the number of deaths, because you can tell the group sizes are much different. This is 6,000 odd people here in this group size, I think, and this is 4,000 and 5,000 in here. So that's not necessarily appropriate. Oh, Johnson & Johnson NA not applicable. Okay, overall mortality rates and race. Okay, we're age and sex standardized. Okay. In other words, almost everything got sucked in together. Anyway, no, I'm kidding. That's not what happened. Anyway, let's see here. So these are the numbers to pay attention to. Notice, of course, as you get to the older age brackets, the number gets larger anyway, because these are people who have a lot of people who might be sick, people who might have cancer or some other disease and what have you. That's unfortunately the nature of the beast as you're aging. And here, so. But this is the thing that is interesting, because these are saying this is the mortality rate associated with non-COVID reasons for death. That can include anything from a car accident, plane crash, adverse drug overdose from something, dying from cancer, dying from heart attack, dying from heart disease, dying from stroke. Can include anything, really. And why I'm asking the question of what does associated with COVID-19 mean when they removed those from thing? What do they mean by that? Because The reason I'm asking that is because in the vaccinated category, that could include people who've had adverse reactions from the vaccine and potentially died. That could include those. But they don't clarify here at all in this particular thing what they mean by a death associated with COVID-19. And I'm being very frank about using their language here because that's what strikes me strange, is that, yeah. Wait, I had it. Where'd it go? Not associated with COVID-19. So yeah, what is a death? What is the mortality rate associated with COVID-19? And where did you remove? Yeah, they removed people who tested positive or who died of COVID. So what about everything else in there? You know, there's a lot of things there that I wonder about. And I have to wonder because they talk about the vaccine recipients being mostly healthier. Okay, fine. Another thing that could be, that I don't think the authors are exploring here, is that the vaccinated people, the group who are vaccinated, maybe more likely because they are more health conscious, perhaps, more likely not to go out and about, more likely not to be in a store, more likely not to be in a car, more likely not to be on a train or traveling anywhere or flying anywhere or anything like that. So I'm wondering how much of it is them being health conscious versus how much of it is actually being safety conscious. Does that make sense? It's a little bit hard for me to get my thoughts out with what I'm thinking on this, but that's why I'm wondering about this. And I am not necessarily convinced that this study, because this is not I don't think the way they do these are peer reviewed. This is just reports done for the CDC. And so they may have somebody review it, but I am not 100% sure on that. That would be CDC's grounds to comment on. But that's the kinds of things that I wonder about is, you know, how much did you, what did you take out? What do you mean as a death associated with COVID-19? Versus a death not associated with COVID-19. Do you mean somebody died with COVID? Or do you mean somebody died from something else? And just happened to have COVID? Because those are two very different things. Something I'm curious about. Just asking a question, YouTube. But safe to say, I find it very, how do I put this? Very somewhat propagandistic to get into the thing of you will be less likely to die from anything if you get the COVID-19 vaccine as an attempt to get people to take it when they don't want it. It is entirely up to you and your doctor whether or not you should get the vaccine. And, you know, consult the CDC and look at all the data and all that kind of stuff. Go do that. But you know, this is not necessarily going to make people want to go get it, I don't think. And I do think it was a poor scientific communication here because I would like to know if you broke that down and actually changed it to being about disease deaths versus being about other things, then that's an interesting thing here. And I also say this is really, I feel like 5,000 is a really small sample, to be honest. I feel maybe I'm reading this table wrong, and if I am reading this table wrong, then CDC forgot to label something here that's kind of important, because if there's only like 5,000 or 6,000 people in this, that's a really small sample when you're talking about the number of people who have been vaccinated, along with the number of people who live in this country. So that's kind of curious. So that's my thoughts. I think this headline is stupid. I think CNN didn't do the best job of putting this out there, to be honest, and this probably will convince absolutely no one to go get a COVID-19 vaccine. Anyway, consult with your doctor. Consult with check the CDC results and things like that before you make up your mind on whether or not to go get a COVID-19 vaccine. You know, it's your personal choice, and consult your doctor about it. That's what I encourage you to do. I am not giving any medical advice. YouTube, stop. Stop being censorious, YouTube. Anyway, that's it for now. That's my thoughts. This is not great science from what I can see because it's actually remarkably untransparent, amongst other things. But anyway, if you like this channel, hit the like button on the way out the door. Come on over and join us in Locals. We're going to have a fun old time there. Comment, share, all that good jazz. And until next time, I'm Adrian, and I hope you stay curious.